From courtside of the virtual hardwood, it's the NLSC Podcast. This is episode 494. I am Andrew in our forum, Andrew NLSC on X. Joining me as always, my co-host Derek, DP3 in our forum, and DP3G and DP384 on X. Derek, good to be on here talking to you as always. I'd ask you what's new, but we know what's new. NBA 2K24.
Yeah, and an unplanned, forced upon us, big baller brand matchup on the PC version. Our goal was to use the Play with Friends online option on the Series X / PS5 versions of this game. Andrew has a PS5, I have a Series X. We were going to play co-op, cross-platform, and we were planning to have a blast. Well, that option was unlocatable. We couldn't find it in those versions of the game. So we pivoted and went to the PC version of NBA 2K24, and that Play with Friends online option was there. Andrew selected Play Online Team Up, so him and I, on the same team. We were going to use the Bulls, and we were going to go against the Hornets with the Bulls at home. And what ended up happening was we get into the game, and I was locked on LaMelo Ball for the Hornets, and he was locked on Lonzo Ball for the Bulls, and we ended up having to go head-to-head. The game forced this upon us. I will say this, though, Andrew. It was a fun game that ended in ridiculous fashion, and that YouTube video is now up on the NLSC channel. Zach LaVine, I'm not happy with him right now.
It's funny, we were talking the other week about how you've hit multiple game winners against me. I finally get one against you, but I can't take credit for it. That is the CPU, because I was player locked to Lonzo Ball, as you said. And yeah, the nomenclature of that mode, there's a few different modes you can pick when you invite a friend to your locker room to play with friends online. And yeah, I thought I selected the option that was a co-op mode. It seemed to be a private match team up, and yet it was a head-to-head mode where we were player locked, as you said, and the name of that doesn't seem to match.
Yeah, well, I want to point something out. If you watch the YouTube video, you'll see that Zach LaVine shot never should have gone in. It was a 30-foot three, heavily contested, and he smoked it. I thought that you and I both played very well in our roles. Obviously, with LaMelo, I had to take on more of a scoring role, so I think I had 20-plus points. I think you ended up with 13 with Lonzo. I had to do a little bit more because leaning on P.J. Washington and Brandon Miller and short Terry Rozier and whatnot in that game, it just was not working. They were taking some pretty bad shots. They were missing easy shots at the rim. Meanwhile, DeRozan hits a double spin fade away at the end of the shot clock. Zach LaVine is doing step back jumpers. Vucevic is hitting threes off of kickouts from Caruso. So I will say this. The Bulls won. They won by 3. Your team won, but you did have a little bit better of a supporting cast there.
I did. And of course the advantage of selecting that team, because again, we thought we were going to be co-op Bulls versus Hornets. We picked the Hornets, I guess, to have that an opponent that wasn't going to be too taxing for a quick, fun session before we started recording. But, yeah, not the team you would pick normally.
No, but I will say this. LaMelo is a little bit better in that game than Lonzo, so I did have that advantage.
I think he's a bit better in real life as well, to be honest. But.
Yeah, definitely. I was able to do a little bit more off the dribble. I did catch a couple oops as well. And I think in the game, LaMelo also has a speed advantage. So I did have that. Both of us commented on this. We're going to be giving our impressions, our first impressions, the first 3 hours of playtime, you could say, on both Next Gen and PC on this episode. But I think the most noticeable difference between the PC version and the PS5 Series X version is the PC version does have a little bit better foot planting. I think you would agree.
Yeah.
Your players aren't sliding as much on defense or on offense with or without the ball. And it is a nice feature of the PC version.
Yeah, I like the movement in general on the PC version a bit better. Even just the responsiveness, the way the players respond to the input. There's still that heaviness on the PS5, Xbox Series X version that I can work with, and I can see what they're going for. But you want the players to have some heft and not just water bug around like some of the games back in the day in the mid 2000s when they were still working out foot planting, for example. But yeah, it just it feels a bit lighter on the sticks on PC, and I enjoy that more.
Yeah, and there's also less canned bumping, right? When you try to turn a corner or something like that, I feel like there's a little bit less suction on the PC version. There's definitely been some quality of life improvements made over NBA 2K23. So they did give it some attention to detail. For example, on the PC version, and obviously when I say on the PC version, I also mean the Xbox One and PS4 versions, they once again brought back right stick signature size ups with a flick of the right stick, and I think that is awesome. You'll see me do it in that YouTube video with LaMelo Ball, where I flick the right stick forward and he goes into a signature size up, and I can burst off of it or step back from it, etc. I just think it adds a lot of authenticity to the game, and it gives you more options. And the movement feels, I think you might agree, the movement feels a little less janky on 2K24 PC than it did on 2K23. It feels a little bit smoother. The players aren't, moving as awkward. And so I might be spending a decent amount of time with the PC version this year.
No, I was quite impressed by the PC version. I think you could possibly say that there's more polish to that motion system on that platform. It feels like they have made some changes on the new system. We talked about 2K21 being built from the ground up, and we are skeptical about that. We were skeptical about it. We still are. But there obviously are some changes with the motion system, with the player movement on that generation. And yeah, I don't think necessarily for the better. I don't think they've quite got it yet. And I'll be honest, I don't really see the advantages of Pro Play yet. I mean, it's one of those things where, for a long time I thought Eco Motion in 2K14 for PS4, Xbox One was just a marketing gimmick. And the more I've played that game, the more I've come to see some of the unique animations, the way that worked with Eco Motion. Why that was such a fantastic system. So I'm sure the more I play it, I will start to see some of the improvements that Pro Play has made. Maybe they're more subtle, but out of the box, it doesn't feel very different to 2K23. At least as far as the feel on the sticks and the player movement. As you say, there is that bumping, that there's still those two-man animations. It feels like, even on PC, I had that breakaway with Alonzo Ball, and I got sucked backwards into you, and I had to take that runner instead of finishing with a layup. So it's still there that you're getting sucked into those two-man animations. So that is a legacy issue that definitely needs to be pointed out.
Yeah, that legacy issue where getting sucked back is, I want to say it became super prominent with the new motion system starting with like 2K18, and then it actually started getting worse with the new revamp with NBA 2K20, and now it just hasn't gone away, that whole like being sucked backwards thing. And I think that it's worse in the last gen games like PC, Xbox One, PS4.
Agreed.
Because I don't notice as much in the next gen versions. It seems like they've cleaned that up a little bit. I know that I was not a fan of how constant it happened with like NBA 2K21. Over the last few years, they've definitely cleaned that up on the next gen, aka current gen. It's technically the current gen now. It's been since 2K21 since these games have been coming out on the new consoles.
2K are calling it new gen and current gen, so that's the nomenclature they're going with.
Right. Yeah. I mean that.
For what it's
that makes
worth.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some other things with the PC version. Obviously, the alley-oop meter is still there. I'm not a fan of it. I know how to use it. I used it against you with LaMelo Ball and the Hornets. So that's there, and there's still no option to turn it off. However, all the things that are in the next-gen version, as far as all the different meters and different meter options, etc., those are basically the same on PC. So that's good. They brought that over to the PC, Xbox One, and PS4 versions. I prefer the game menu on the PC version. I think that people are going to have a blast modding that, which we'll get into the whole mods folder thing in a moment that 2K provided us. But I like the menu system. I like the familiarity with the instant replay. I like the familiarity with the instant replay. I'm not a big fan of the way it works on new gen, etc. But that menu system, when you first get into the PC game, where it shows the huge portraits of the players when you cycle through the different menu options, that looks amazing.
And I like the simplified approach. And I do like the menus on Next Gen as well. Reminds me a lot of kind of circa 2K16, 2K17, the way they laid out the menus there, at least on New Gen. So I do like what they've done with the design this year of the UI. I will say, though, Derek, and this is not to dump on a lot of hardworking people, I'm sure, but the fact that 2K TV still autoplays in the main menu and there's no way to disable it, Look, I know they're trying to push it, and that's obviously putting time and money and effort into that, but call me an old head if you want, but I don't want to see it.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that either. I never watch it. I just want to turn it off. However, we can give them credit in another area. They actually have a game intro that plays every single time you turn on the game.
Very cool.
For this year, both on the last gen version and the new gen version, and obviously it's mostly centered around Kobe, but it has other highlights of the current NBA in there, etc. But it is a great intro. It's incredibly well executed, and it's a throwback, Andrew. It's something that we always loved as a feature in old games.
It delighted me, quite frankly, to see that when I first fired up the game and see, an intro again, because it's been years. 2K17 is the last time we had an intro, and it is very well done. It is kind of false advertising on the PC, because the PC has the same intro, and it has the next-gen, new-gen graphics, so it's kind of a misleading there, I think, but it is very well done, spotlighting Kobe, obviously, and this year is, about the Mamba moments and whatnot. But yeah, I was really glad to see that back. It is a throwback, and these little details do hype you up to play the game. And for us, they're very nostalgic, and that helps as well.
Yeah, and you can skip it too. Like, you can hold in the A button. I use obviously Xbox controllers, but you can hold in the A button and then it like skips the intro. So they give you that option as well. For the PC version, graphics are basically the same as 2K23. I don't see an improvement there. The scoreboard looks slightly different. I actually like it a little bit better than last year, but it's in the same location. It's not the one like on new gen where it sprawls across the bottom of the screen, etc. As far as gameplay, it is still very similar to 2K23, but like I stated earlier, it does have quality of life improvements, and I definitely recommend people picking it up on a sale. And as the Point Forward mentioned on our Discord, around Christmas time, that game is almost sure to be 50% off, sometimes more. And I've seen the game go as much as 75 to 80% off shortly after Christmas. So if you have some patience in you, you could get that game on sale, and I definitely recommend it on sale.
Yeah, I mean, my initial impressions are kind of positive. I guess I had a lot of expectations, that skepticism, that cynicism that we've talked about before. I wasn't expecting to be blown away by the gameplay, by a brand new experience, if you will. So I do like what I've played so far. I like that the AI is more aggressive, looking to take advantage of lapses defensively. Smart play, I'm liking having that back. I put that to good use in my first game, playing the Jordan era Bulls versus Nets. That was fun to do a throwback game there for my first proper game of 2K24. I did actually go into practice first and just have a bit of a shoot around, see how the shooting felt this year. I have mixed feelings about the shooting, Derek. I've kind of liked it so far. I haven't played in Hall of Fame, so I'm not playing Green or Miss, or online, so not playing Green or Miss. But no, I've seen some mixed opinions about the shooting online on X and other platforms, but I'm not disliking it, but I also understand the criticisms.
I like the shooting better than 2K23.
Yeah,
because it's not
always
like late or very late or early or very early. It feels like sometimes you can shoot with the player more true to form, like a normal release. So for me, shooting is an improvement so far. again, these are our first impressions, from, the first couple hours we've spent with both last gen and new gen. I definitely agree with the smarter AI on the PC, Xbox One, and PS4 versions, as I stated in a post earlier today on X. And, I played a game using the Celtics versus the New York Knicks. And those highlights, my highlights with the Celtics, are up on the NLSC YouTube as well. And I was incredibly impressed with how the Knicks played against me overall. You had to be disciplined on defense. They were able to actually hit some semi-contested shots, which they really weren't able to last year. They were taking advantage of, driving lanes. They were moving more without the ball. It seems like the AI was not only improved on the new gen version of NBA, for NBA 2K24, but also for the PC, Xbox One, PS4 version. So that is another plus. Do I still have issues with player movement? Yes, I still think that the ball warps a little bit too much. I still think that the running animations aren't as sharp as they used to be in many past 2Ks. I feel like changing direction is still pretty unrealistic, the way the players move their bodies. I still think that there's a little bit too much suction in the paint, so I'm not completely thrilled with the game, but it's a game that, my brother and I are going to play, and I may jump into my team on it as well. I will say this too. Remember we played NBA 2K21, Bulls versus Celtics online? That was the last time we played an online game using the 2K servers. And remember how much of a nightmare that was?
A lot of lag, yeah.
There not only a lot of lag, but just the game mechanics. We talked about that session offline, and I believe that we talked about it on the show as well, and we were like, that was not that fun. We're not going to be spending a lot of time with the game, is what we said at the time. This was definitely a more positive experience with 2K24.
It was. I mean, I see myself playing this game, both PC and PS5 this year. Tempted to get into some modding, obviously, with that mods folder there, which we will get to. But yeah, I like the aggressiveness both on PC last gen and the new gen as well. I did play that game 91, or rather 92, Bulls versus Nets. I eased up at the end and was just trying to go for some highlights, really, to see if I could get some top 10 plays. And yeah, they took advantage. They saw that I was taking my foot off the pedal, and they just tried to make a bit of a run there. I had built up a comfortable enough lead, and there was not enough time left for them to make that comeback. But yeah, I did have to, stop messing around a bit just to make sure the lead didn't completely evaporate in the final couple of minutes there. So I do like the aggressiveness. I do like, despite the suction in the paint, I do like that there's some more contact there. I like that aggressive blocks, and this was something they talked about in the developer blogs, aggressive blocks do result in more shooting fouls. I do like that. But speaking of fouls and defense, Derek, this may be the worst stealing mechanics we've had in a basketball game, or certainly a 2K game.
Yeah, and that goes for both the last gen and new gen versions of NBA 2K24. It's basically, it feels like press, steal to foul, whether they have the ball on the floor or if they're holding the ball. And my brother and I were actually frustrated with this last night when we were playing the new gen version. We were playing on Series X, and we were using Legends. We were doing, our first Legends game versus regular teams. And I have Michael Jordan, and I'm guarding Conchar. And I cannot jar the ball from Conchar all game. There's no way to get the ball from. Now we do play on Hall of Fame. I get it. But even on Hall of Fame, with Jordan's ability, Jordan is one of the best defensive players of all time and one of the best at steals of all time. And there was no way I was getting the ball from inferior players. Yeah, and it wasn't just Conchar either. Like, I was trying to get steals from, their big men, all of that. And there was just, I couldn't get them. I was able to get a few passing lane steals, but on the ball stealing, it really does feel like press, steal to foul. And you never want that. Like, if a player is dribbling down the court and he's dribbling, say, with his left hand, and you guess appropriately before he switches hands with the ball and go for a swipe, and it's not like an aggressive swipe, it's a tactical swipe, you should be able to jar that ball if you do it at right timing, right? But in these games, what it feels like is when you do it, they force you into a foul, or the ball handler will suddenly unnaturally, unrealistically turn his body away from you and the ball will warp to the other hand, right? So it's yeah, I'm not asking for a patch on that because I hate patches, because I think oftentimes patches hurt the game, and I'd rather just keep the game the way it is out of the box. But yeah, it very much feels like press steel to file.
I'm wondering if there's a slider adjustment we can make, at least for offline play. Obviously, it's not going to help online play, it's not going to help my team, but maybe that's something we can look into and improve that for our fellow traditional gamers, if you will. I'd definitely be willing to look into that. And the other thing is, even if they don't do that warping or get that foul, there were a few times when I was knocking the ball loose with MJ in that game that I played, and the CPU would just unrealistically recover the loose ball before I could knock it completely loose as well. So that felt very canned and contrived.
Yeah. So I want people to understand too, this episode is about our first impressions, but mostly our gameplay impressions, right? Through play now, maybe dabbling a little bit in MyTEAM, maybe playing against each other or against the computer, etc. Like, this is going to be mostly centered around gameplay. We'll obviously have a future episode on like second impressions, third impressions, etc.
Deep dive into modes,
deeper dive into modes. But this is mostly about gameplay. So let's get into the new gen version. So my brother and I played against each other, and I posted some of those highlights on X. And it was me with the Pelicans and him with the Clippers. And we went into this game on completely default settings, just with the shot meters off. So like, you turn on the game, you turn the shot meters off, and you go in. And we were pleasantly surprised with a few gameplay elements. One, like I stated earlier, for the PC version, they brought back the signature size ups by flicking the right stick forward. So that added some authenticity and more options with the dribble to our arsenal. We enjoyed that. That was awesome. Less canned blocks. You remember how often snatch blocks would happen in canned blocks in NBA 2K23?
Oh, yeah.
They've removed a lot of that, and blocks feel a lot more organic. Playing defense overall in the paint feels a lot more organic and less canned, and that was a really nice surprise as well. With the default settings, we felt like we could get into the mid-range, into the high post, etc. You'll see me doing snatch back dribbles with CJ McCollum and hitting mid-range shots, throwing an up fake and going hard right and doing like a side away with McCollum, etc. It feels like the shots on the move feel a little bit better. The shooting feels a little bit better. In general, we felt like the game felt a little less janky with the player movement, less weird straight up and down dribbling where the player is supposed to be like moving forward at a, pushing the ball forward, but instead he's like moving fast but standing straight up, and it looks really awkward. There's less of that. It feels like the post game is still as dominant, but the perimeter game is not. It feels like the defense one-on-one has been improved. Even if you lower body up sensitivity in the sliders for CPU and user to 0, you're still going to get body blocked when you play on Superstar or Hall of Fame the majority of the time. So you have to be a little bit more tactical with your dribble and with your first step, etc. So before I throw it over to you, from a gameplay standpoint, I feel like the game is solid on Pro and All-Star for 2K24.
Yeah,
new gen.
Agreed.
But when you put it on Hall of Fame, and even if you lower body up sensitivity to 0, that game can be an ultimate frustrating nightmare. And the biggest reason is because it doesn't matter how fast your offensive player is. It doesn't matter how good of a dribbler he is. It doesn't matter how quick he is. And you could be being guarded by a average or below average defender. You can try to make a move and you're constantly being bumped, right? You're getting bumped. You're being made to either like pick up your dribble. It's super, super frustrating. And then obviously on Hall of Fame, It almost feels like a green or bust thing with shooting. So you have to get your release timing perfect on every shot. And listen, I like the challenge. My brother and I like the challenge. We're going to play our Legends season, or if we start a season against each other, we're going to be playing it on Hall of Fame because that's just the way we play, and we always want to play on the hardest level. But I'm going to say this to our audience. To avoid frustration, to have a more realistic basketball experience, to be able to operate the way you would on a real basketball court more often, play on Pro or All-Star. Those are my recommendations. I don't recommend going up to Superstar or Hall of Fame because that's when things get really canned and they get really silly. And you're going to get more frustrated than not.
Yeah, those harder difficulty levels are obviously for the ultimate challenge, and they're not tuned in a way that is necessarily realistic or fair. That's where the challenge comes from. I do like that there is significant challenge on Pro and All-Star, that it's not just that you can't just beat up on the CPU. Obviously, semi-pro and rookie are much easier. They are for true beginners to the game, but seasoned gamers will probably enjoy Pro and All-Star a lot more. If you need a little bit more challenge and you're not playing MyCAREER or MyTEAM, you could obviously adjust the sliders to begin with Pro or All-Star and just maybe make it a little bit harder here and there. That's always been an option since we've had sliders in basketball video games, so that is something to keep in mind. But yeah, I do like the aggressiveness on those lower difficulty levels. It's not too challenging for newcomers, but at the same time, there is that the challenge is there, and you can crank it up again if you want more of a challenge. And yeah, good basketball does seem to be rewarded, so I do appreciate that if you do create that open shot, that open look, that you can knock those shots down, and that you can make some contested shots as well. So yeah, I'm fairly optimistic about the gameplay this year. As you say, it's very solid on both versions.
Yeah, there's also quite a few animations that were added to driving to the hoop, and some signature ones for Kobe, obviously, and some other players and whatnot. And they look awesome when they happen. And you're going to see more flip shots at the rim. You're going to see more cool looking like contact layups, etc. I really like some of the stuff they've added around the rim. With that being said, it's hard to tell where they used Pro Play on a lot of these drives, but I will say this. Pro Play was absolutely used on some of the signature shots. Some of them are flat out. It's like you're watching TV. When my brother and I were doing the Clippers versus Pelicans game, and it was Paul George out there, and he's shooting his free throws and he's shooting his threes, etc. It looks like Paul George in real life. It looks awesome. I'm guessing Paul George got the Pro Play fix, right? And I think that it's really cool. And I haven't had a chance to get into MyTEAM yet. Or use any of the classic teams, but I am hoping that was used on some of the signature shots, whether at the foul line or the regular leg jumpers, etc., on the classic players. However, before I throw it back to you, a lot of people, I've seen a lot of commentary related to people being a little disappointed with the inaccuracies again in MyNBA Eras. And I guess there's a ton of missing courts. And a lot of inaccuracies with signatures and all of that stuff, and still a lot of missing players. Some of the face assignments that they have are way off. Like Curry has a beard for all of his faces, so if you're using like the 15-16 Curry, he has a beard, right? Even LeBron, for the 12-13 LeBron on the Heat, they have him with a full beard. He didn't have that. He didn't have that with the Heat in 12-13. There's a lot of inaccuracies related to how the players look in the year of their classic team. So I may not jump into MyNBA Eras much again this year because those inaccuracies bother me too much.
I know what you mean. That attention to detail is supposedly what was meant to be the draw of those modes, and they've even talked about players aging into different faces over the years. So for them to get the faces wrong is definitely disappointing. I will say that playing the Jordan era game, there is some fun commentary. They were talking about the Dream Team coming up. They're also talking about the hinting at the possibility of instant replay at some time in the future. I love those call forwards like that. That's a fun thing they've done with the commentary there, and they've got some obviously era-specific commentary, which they had last year as well. That's really nice. I do like that they've brought the Play Now eras that is there out of the box. Obviously, it was originally in there as a we discovered it as what we weren't supposed to have access to it originally. It was there as a debug menu, and then they patched it in with, I think, patch 4 last year. So I'm glad that they didn't take that away or make that a seasonal drop again. That is there out of the box as it should be. But it is disappointing, yes, that there is that lack of attention to detail. I think I've heard that the Jazz have their 90s court all the way through to 2010. So little things like that the mode, there's a lot of work has gone into MyNBA Eras and the changing of the rules and the changing of the teams and the changing of the branding. But that attention to detail is crucial. And again, it seems like it's lacking. Hopefully Terrell Brandon isn't 5'1" again, but yeah, that's what's putting me off the mode as well, is that lack of accuracy.
Yeah, and you know what? In other areas, they knocked it out of the park, right? Like the presentation elements.
Sure, absolutely.
Like if you go into the Kobe era roster and you see those ESPN style layouts for the tonight's game is between New York Knicks and Los Angeles Lakers, and then it goes to the starting lineup screen and everything. That is amazing, and then the scoreboards look awesome, and they knocked that stuff out of the park. But again, it's about the on the floor action that matters the most, the gameplay as well, related to the attributes, signatures, tendencies, etc. And I haven't done a deep dive into those yet, but I am concerned with the things that I'm hearing.
Phil Jackson not having a great triangle rating. I mean, Phil Jackson.
I mean, it's Phil Jackson. He's the king of the triangle.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I think that a lot of my critiques with this new motion system are still there. Like, I still think there's too much ball warping. And you can definitely see a lot of that with the videos people are uploading of their online play. And I've actually sent a few of those videos to you where they're dribbling so fast that the ball isn't even hitting the floor, right? It's just like transferring from hand to hand, and it looks absolutely ridiculous. I said to you, I think the way the players move oftentimes and the way they look and the bodies and all of that stuff, this really is like the Fortnite motion system. It's like the Fortnite generation of NBA 2K games, and I think that's super unfortunate. So I still have issues with the ball warping. I still have issues with the way the players change directions and how awkward that looks and how unhuman that looks and how it affects the gameplay. And just the janky movement of this new motion system overall. And I think that, when I go back and play like 2K17 and 2K15 and 2K16, etc., I can just see just like a massive amount of more realism related to how the players move in comparison. So like they move more like real life basketball players. So yeah, I still have my issues, with the suction. There's still quite a bit of skating in the new gen NBA 2K24. I'm still not a fan of the shooting in comparison to, the last motion system, etc. So I am not thrilled, but I do see some quality of life improvements in both last gen and new gen 2K24.
I'm in the same boat. I guess because I was setting the bar so low in some respects, it's cleared that bar at least. So I'm kind of pleased about that. But certainly there are legacy issues there, some concerning issues with the modes as well here and there. And we are mostly focusing on gameplay this week, as you said. But just to quickly touch on some issues, I haven't gotten into MyCAREER yet. I will get into that and talk about that in a future show and in articles and so forth. There seems to be an issue at the moment where if you quit an offline game, a single-player NBA-sided MyCAREER game, you get hit with a 1 hour ban or a half-hour ban sometimes, similar to if you quit an online game. So it seems like they've just implemented that across the mode, not thinking about, sometimes people might have to quit out of an offline game to because of real life or whatever, or maybe there's a server problem and they get disconnected and then you get banned because of 2K's problem. That's also an issue. So I've been holding off on my career, but at the same time, if it's only an hour ban, then at least I'm not getting my whole account banned. I will jump into that. It does sound like there are some problems with the NBA player templates, Derek. For example, the Jimmy Butler template has a block rating of 25, whereas the actual Jimmy Butler has a much higher block rating. So even the NBA presets don't even match the proper NBA players that they're based on. So there are some issues there. Who knows if they're going to get patched, and then, of course, if you've already picked the template and put money into it or put pre-order VC into it or whatever, too bad. That is obviously a huge problem with my career. I will get back to that. But with my team, I have gotten into that. I've played a few my team games, did enjoy them. It's enjoyable on the court. The variety of modes is enjoyable as always as well. But you called it, Derek. You called the too good to be true with the player market. Players in the player market very expensive. The cheapest is a 78 overall Stephon Marbury, 3,500 MT or 2,500 VC. A 90 overall Al Horford is 140,000 MT or 100,000 VC. To put that into real world dollars, to get those amounts of MT or VC, if you don't have them on hand, that costs 82.45 Australian. So I'm guessing probably around 50-60 US. Just to get one player.
50 to 60. Imagine spending $50 to $60 on Al Horford.
On one player.
Yeah, after you've already bought the game. Yeah, I that's why I said when they announced that they were getting rid of the auction house and allowing 2K themselves to take more control over, the players and their prices and all of that stuff, I knew what the goal was there.
It wasn't out of altruism. Right? It wasn't altruistic at all, no.
Exactly. Because I think what they realized was that most people were being able to fill up their lineups with 90 to 91 overall versions of their favorite players or players that they wanted, and that they were still able to compete or be effective on the court with those players. And they didn't have to put any extra money or a lot of extra money into the mode to get those players, right? So I believe somebody showed like a 91 overall Jason Williams in NBA 2K24 for over 100,000 VC.
Same price, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And guess who got a 91 overall Jason Williams for like 3,000 VC in 2K23?
Yeah.
Me.
Yeah, the auction house, yeah.
Then the auction house, right. So like, I'm going to read this tweet from DBG who talks about this. He says, rubies you buy for 70K, my team sell for 28K. So instead of a 10% auction house tax, there's a 60% 2K tax. I repeat, 2K are taxing 60% tax on any card purchase. And that's before they take the hit to sell price in 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's the greed that you were talking about. Too good to be true. And they've obviously solved the problem of third-party MT resellers, but they've also added a new currency that you can buy. Or the currency was already there, but they've also made that possible to buy now. The supposed increased payouts, I haven't really seen it yet. I've been mostly playing Triple Threat offline. That doesn't have the biggest payouts to begin with. I haven't seen much of a change there. I'll see if it's bigger when I get into some domination games that are longer and have bigger payouts. We will see, but so far it doesn't look like they're following through on that promise of bigger payouts there, because of course it's better for them if we buy it. So yeah, that's no surprise there. The cheapest pack is the Series 1 players, 2,850 VC or 4,000 MT. The prices overall still aren't great. So it's what you're getting with the MT earnings, and of course you don't get any VC at all in games played in my team. It's still poor value for in-game currency when you compare the market prices to the in-game earnings. I do like the approach to agendas. I get the feeling that season progression is going to be very slow without paid skips and 2 times XP coins. So yeah, I mean, I can see how it's going to be a very greedy mode. No surprise there. It's going to be interesting to see if no money spent is as viable as it was in previous years. I do think they're ramping up the pressure there. The on-court experience is fun, and there's a lot of great things about my team, but that the recurrent revenue mechanics and their impact is hanging over our heads as always, and seems to be looming larger than ever before. Once again, I'll circle back to my career in a future show, probably next week when I've had a chance to get into that. But look, the modes are deep. the modes, the variety of modes and the quality of modes, it's still there, but obviously the lack of attention to detail in MyNBA Eras is disappointing. The on-court product I am enjoying so far, but yeah, obviously some issues there, and people getting banned for quitting the single-player games. That is a huge oversight, and they need to fix that ASAP.
Yeah, I also want to point something out. If somebody bought the $100 version of NBA 2K24, they get 100K VC, right? That $100 version that you just bought gets you Al Horford. Do you know how stupid that is?
Yeah.
Like, that's a money grab. That money grab is ridiculous. And the other piece that I wanted to bring up in relation to kind of being unfair to the gamer, because they deserve to be called out for this stuff.
Absolutely.
And once again, DBG that pointed this out on X. He stated that people bought MyTEAM cards with their virtual currency or MyTEAM points. And like we talked about, the prices are ridiculous. So a lot of these people, in order to get these cards, they were putting extra money into the game over the top of their purchase, more than likely, right? So the game, like the 2K decided to do a patch on a bunch of the cards. And these cards were cards that people already bought. And so they bought these cards for a specific reason. And they bought them as advertised. And the nerf to these cards was like 20 or 25 lower on speed. I believe there was other nerfs, etc. But people paid already for those cards, and now you're taking abilities away from those cards. Is like he says, is that legal? Is it legal to advertise a card that people are spending their hard-earned money on, more than they've ever spent probably on any 2K at this point, to get these cards? Is it legal for them to alter that purchase?
Yeah, I wouldn't think so, but that's.
I don't think that. I mean, I think somebody would have a case there. So that's wild. Like some of the stuff that's going on right now with the money grab stuff. And like stuff like you mentioned, like the banning online and then the nerfing cards that people already got, like that stuff is suspect. That stuff is sketchy.
It is, and it's that lack of goodwill we've talked about before, and doing it very sneakily, not really being open about it. And look, people would still be upset, and rightfully so, if they were open about it, but it's the lack of transparency, as always, that really, is what really upsets people.
Right. Well, if they asked, like, hey, everybody, what do you think about us nerfing these cards that you already bought? Everybody would be like, no.
Yeah, of course.
Like, no, absolutely not. This is this is the reason I bought it. So, yeah, I don't know. Again, as far as like what I do, like my playing habits, I am not going to be affected by the bans that you're talking about, by, more than likely by the nerfed cards. I'm not going to be affected by any of the online stuff, really, because, I'm an offline player with these games. But I really care about my fellow gamer, and I want these games to be fair to the consumer. And just a lot of these practices with 2K, they absolutely bum me out. It's just not fair.
And these things do deserve to be called out, and there's not enough people calling them out, or not enough people of influence that are calling them out, because as we've said before, that's how you lose your perks and your access.
Right, and we don't care about that.
Yeah.
So, and
we've burned our bridges, man. We've burned our bridges long ago. So.
But even if we did care about that, we want to sleep at night.
Yeah.
So, like, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night if I went along with it.
Before we go on, a reminder that the NLSC podcast comes out every week on the NLSC, MBA-live.com, as well as our YouTube channel. We're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other podcast apps. If you're listening on any of those apps, we'd greatly appreciate a review. To keep up with the show and everything we're doing with basketball gaming in general, connect with us on social media. On Twitter and Facebook, we are the NLSC. We also have an Instagram, NLSC Basketball, and on YouTube, we're youtube.com/NBA Live Series Center. Once again, visit us at NBA-live.com, where in addition to the podcast, you'll also find all of our original content, as well as our forum and modding community. And we mentioned the mods folder on the PC version before we throw it over to some community responses. You put out the prompt and asking people about their first impressions of the game. We will read those out shortly. But it is cool that the PC version has a mods folder by default, similar to the old custom art folder for NBA Live back in the day. And this means we don't need that unofficial plugin. I mean, Luya has been doing fantastic work and has actually just released the NBA 2K24 Explorer to dig into the files. But with that mods folder, we do have that folder to just drop files in already. It seems like a handful of mods for 2K23 are compatible with 2K24 without conversion. Not all of them, obviously, but we've already got a head start on modding. Shout out to Sex Curry Beats. Once again, fantastic username there for being the first uploader to our download section. The first files in our download section were his. Some great mods there: red, white, and blue ball and net, and a custom blacktop court as well. And you can also find Luya's Explorer in the tools section as well. So head start on modding thanks to that mods folder. That is something we've wanted to see for years. We had it in NBA Live. It was so useful for modding back then. So that is good news, Derek. And these are the kinds of things, because we basically heard nothing about the current gen, prior gen, PC, PS4, X1 version during the previous season at all. If they'd just given us some information like this about the PC version, I think people would have been a little bit more optimistic.
Yeah, so we have Sex Curry Beats and Juicy Shack Meat in the NLSC community. What a special community, Andrew.
Yeah.
They're excellent.
Makes my username look very ordinary. Andrew.
Exactly. Yeah, and D for 3. Yeah, how plain and unoriginal are we?
Well, when we start streaming, we're going to have our D-bags and A-holes. So,
Yeah, we'll get into that on another episode of the NLSC.
Yeah.
So before I get into the whole mods folder thing, I do want people to understand that on the PC, Xbox One, and PS4 versions, Mamba Moments is in the game. Like, that mode is in the game. But again, MyNBA Eras is not. So you do not have, errors in quick play. You don't have the MyNBA Eras option, etc. in the past gen, versions of 2K24. So don't get the game thinking that you're going to get those, because you're not. However, that is a nice addition. I mean, that tool was probably going to be made anyway within the first week or two by the 2K community, more than likely somebody like Luya, who's just amazing and he creates great tools every year. But obviously, I've said this before on past NLSC podcasts, not only are 2K devs, people who work for the company, etc., not only do they know about modding, but they use mods, right? They use the roster mods. They use the updated cyber faces. They're checking in on the NLSC to see, what the community is doing and what they're bringing forth in relation to mods. There's been people from the NLSC community like Razor, a cyber face maker, tool makers like Leftos and Vlad, content creators like Jasmine, like all of these people were plucked from the NLSC to work for 2K. Right. So they have their eyes on the forum. So I think that was like kind of throwing the PC community a bone and saying, hey, we see you. And we do appreciate that. Right. And I do like some of the stuff they did with the menus in that game, because I think they had modding in mind when they put those forward, like the giant portraits when you're cycling through the menus, all of that stuff. The PC version of NBA 2K24 looks very moddable. And you might see some great mods for that game. So I do think that was a nice touch.
But yeah, I guess that's it for our first impressions of the game. So let's throw it over to the community by opening up the mailbag.
To the mailman, the pump fake. What an unbelievable dunk.
So I asked the community, what are your first impressions of NBA 2K24? And I asked specifically people who have gotten their hands on the game, right? And I didn't mention which version I was talking about, past gen or new gen, etc. Just 2K24 in general. But all of the comments under my post were referencing the new gen version, because I do believe that the majority of people are now on new gen. At least that's the way it seems.
I think so. We're seeing more of that in our community as well. I mean, obviously, we've got that reputation as a PC community, and we're always going to support PC releases and modding and push for that new-gen release to be ported to PC, but a lot of us are on console as well.
Yeah, and, you and I double dip. So, we're on PC, so we got that, past-gen version, and we also have the new-gen version. Me on, Series X, and you on PS5.
Exactly, which is why we've covered both and will continue to cover both versions. But let's get to the responses now. First up is Shady at Shady Mike Gaming. Says, dribbling is much improved, play interactions are much worse, guys glitching, skipping all over the place. The motion blur in the instant replay is the most annoying thing on the planet. I like the fact that you can select what indicators you can turn on and off now.
Yeah, so the instant replay motion blur thing. So I actually went in, and I do not like the new instant replay feature for that game. I don't like the UI. I know that you can hide it, but it doesn't always work to hide it. The one that's sprawled out on the bottom of the screen. There is like a deep settings menu within the instant replay where you can actually turn off motion blur. So I don't know if you've tried that, Shady Mike, but you can go on there and give that a try. It is unfortunate that you have to go into a setting to turn off motion blur each time. But I will say this. I still can't believe we don't have instant replays in 60 FPS. We've had it in past games. The instant replay feature is still in 30 FPS, and I think that's honestly unacceptable for these new gen consoles. I mean, on PS4 games, the replays were in 60 FPS. So why can't we achieve 60 FPS on instant replays in new gen? But he said something about guys glitching and, skipping all over the place. I don't really see that. I don't see anything different with that, in comparison to like NBA 2K23. I think the player movement is just still awkward in general. I think that, like I stated before, changing direction still looks awkward. The ball warping I mentioned, the dribbling, the arms moving faster than they could ever move in real life. But thanks for the response.
And next up is Trent at Cystic_Jedi. Says, I feel like this is the smoothest gameplay we've had since 2K14-17, much more freedom in movement, not seeing as many cheesy blocks as years past. The dribbling feels 1-to-1 with the flick of the sticks, and shooting without a meter is the best it's been since 17. Very responsive. And I have been shooting with the meter. I haven't turned it off. I'm a noob in that case, I suppose. I do like the meter. I guess from my time playing online, I'm just used to playing with the meter. But no, as I said, I am enjoying shooting, Derek. But I kind of feel like free throws are harder than jump shots. That feels kind of backwards to me there.
Yeah, it's like NBA Inside Drive, Andrew. The free throw system is absolutely terrible in that game. Free throws are much harder than jump shots. But they call them free, Andrew. They should be easier.
Yeah.
In relation to the shot meter, I actually didn't use the shot meter against you. You'll see that on the YouTube video that I uploaded to the NLSC when we played our online head-to-head game. I absolutely can't stand the shot meter, so I'm the opposite of you. I never like it. I want to focus on my player. I don't want to focus on a meter on the side of my body or under my feet or anything like that. I don't have any issue with people using the meter. I understand why you use it and why other people use it. And I also understand that, people who have used it for a long time, it's hard to get away from it, right?
Yeah.
So, no issues there. I do like the shooting a little bit better this year. He mentioned dribbling feels 1-to-1. I do feel like the dribbling is better this year than it was on NBA 2K23. I agree that it's tighter. Even though it's a bit unrealistic at times, it definitely is tighter this year on the sticks. And I love how he mentioned that the blocks don't feel as cheesy, because that's what I mentioned at the onset of the show when we were giving our impressions. I think that they've removed a lot of the canned blocks, and blocks feel a little bit more organic this year.
And next up we have JStash23 says, I like it. And of course, what popped into my mind just there, Derek, is the Mr. Horse from Ren and Stimpy. No, sir, I don't like it. Or, no, sir, I like it. But it says, I like it. Slider tinkering will be a must. The presentation/atmosphere is literally a copy and paste job. I need 2K to update it. It's been the same since 2K17. That's where I miss NBA Live the most. Dribbling is OP, just my opinion, but again, sliders hopefully can tune it. And yeah, I talked about some slider changes some slider tweaks that might be useful for gameplay, so it is good that we have sliders in basketball video games. They're a must.
Oh, no, 100%. I tinker with them every year. And also, Ren and Stimpy is my favorite cartoon of all time, so I really appreciate that you knew about Mr. Horse and that whole thing. Because I think I've watched every episode of that cartoon. The original Nicktoon, Andrew.
Yes.
And it was good. In relation to the atmosphere, I made a thread about it on the NLSC back in, I don't know, like 2016 or 2017, basically how much I missed the atmosphere of games like NBA 2K10 and 2K11 and 2K14, where the crowd was super into the action. They were up on their feet more often. They reacted to plays more realistically, etc. And here's the truth of the matter. What they're doing with the newest 2Ks actually is kind of realistic for the way the NBA is now. Right? Like if you watch NBA games from the early 2010s, the 2000s, the 90s, the 80s and everything, the crowd volume is just higher. Like they were more into the games. There was, I watched a game recently from 85, 86, and it was the 76ers versus the Lakers. And I actually uploaded that footage to X. And, one of the, people were talking about how it's like playoff atmosphere for a regular season game. The crowd is so into it all game. They're up on their feet. They're screaming. They're reacting to everything that's going on the court. And if you watch NBA games now, that's just not the way it is, right? So I agree. I miss like the crowd being more into it. I miss seeing that in video games. But what they're doing actually is almost more of a representation of real life with NBA 2K24, NBA 2K23, etc., where the volume of the crowd is lower. They're not reacting as often. They're not as animated. Unfortunately, welcome to the NBA in 2023.
And we talked about the different difficulty levels and some of them being more palatable than others. And Rockmoss, Jeff Cortinas, and Steve, the Live King, both touched on that as well. Jeff says, All-Star for MyCAREER, Eras Superstar, Hall of Fame is not good. Shooting is too easy. Second player contact needs tuning. There is better 1v1 contact. Play fluidity into jumpers are very good. The game is 7 out of 10 to keep it brief, LOL. And Steve says, similarly, the game is built for 1v1 more than 5v5. I'll probably tinker with the game. MyCAREER feels pretty good on All-Star. So far I've had fun in the mode, minus the cutscenes. They need to add custom rosters for playoffs. They added a whole light MyNBA but can't touch playoffs. Shaking my head.
So I'm definitely going to agree with Rock there on shooting, especially on like pro. It's a little bit harder on All-Star. Like, and remember, I'm talking about like play now, right? Because that's what I've experienced so far. But on pro, it does feel a little bit too easy. As far as his rating of 7 out of 10, I'm interested to see what his rating is in 2 months, right? The more he plays it. I'm interested in hearing about Rock's second and third impressions, how he feels about the online seed and the different modes that he dabbles in, all of that stuff, how he feels about the game as a whole. So I'll probably ask him to report back if he can in a couple months. In relation to what the Live King said, I agree with the 1v1 thing. And I think that that's where a lot of the older games really shined, like the 2K17s, 16s, 15s, 14s, is it really felt like 5-on-5 basketball was at the forefront. The NBA was at the forefront of the creation of the game. And it was about, how you could use your team. You got to know the strengths and weaknesses of your team, who to use at specific points of the game. You got to run people off screens. You got to run plays more often, etc. But in the new motion system, in the newest 2K games, it feels very much like the game is made for 1v1 and not 5-on-5 interactions. So, which is why a lot of the gameplay videos are so hard to watch now, whether it's, online play or whether people are playing in Play Now or MyNBA Eras, etc., because it's a lot of that 1v1 style because that's the way the game is made. And I think that really started, like that trend started when they made that super effort with NBA 2K18 to push everybody online, right? To get people into those money-making modes, which online is their biggest money-making mode, like playing in MyCAREER and then, playing with your buddies on, in the city or whatever, etc. So like, I think that those modes are player lock 100%, right?
Yeah.
And if they're creating a game where it's mostly tailored to a player lock, then you're going to have the game mostly be for like 1v1, right? For a one-player control. So, I think that's why the games feel like that now.
And, of course, focusing on that competitive scene is how we get mechanics like green or miss, basically, and shot aiming and other things that are focused on the myth of the skill gap, as I call it.
And rim mechanics, Andrew, very unrealistic rim mechanics where the ball never bounces in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we had a game, you and I, on what was it, NBA Live 95 or NBA Live 96, and the ball, hit the front of the rim, the back of the rim, and went in. We had a high bounce that went in. It's like, can I really find more realistic rim mechanics and more like make and miss variety on a game that came out almost 30 years ago?
In the mid-90s, yeah. Yeah.
This game, it's the truth, and that's not an exaggeration. It is the truth. I go back and play these games all the time. The rim mechanics in like NBA 2K24 are more realistic than games that came out 30 years ago.
And I have heard from a couple of people that All-Star is a good difficulty to grind on in MyCAREER, so that is something to keep in mind. Obviously, that multiplier there, I'm guessing there's a multiplier again this year, which will help out with the extra VC and progression. Have seen some people talk about the badge regression not being a good idea. I think Chris Smoove has been critical of that. Once again, I will comment on that when I've actually dived into the mode myself. But the other thing is, of course, as you said, it's important that we continue to give impressions as the game evolves, or after we've at least put more time into it. And to that point, Captain Crunch, a problem, great contributor to the top 10, of course, says should be good to go after the 9th patch with a laughing emoji.
Yeah, I appreciate him because he takes a positive attitude into each 2K, right? Like he's going to play it. He's going to try to make the best of it, but he will critique where necessary. And that's kind of how we are, on the NLSC. So, keep submitting those highlights for the top 10 because we love seeing them.
And Renell Parker Sr. says, it plays pretty smooth. I would like to see the defensive rotation switch logic improved. And I do like that the CPU takes advantage of lapses on defense, but I did notice a couple of my CPU teammates making some very weird lapses that probably wouldn't happen that often. So maybe the rotation logic needs to be tightened up a bit.
Yeah, I think on Pro and All-Star, I think that pick and rolls are a little bit too easy to run. I think that you can often set a pick and the defender will get sucked into the pick setter or he'll get confused or wrong-footed a little bit too often, and you can just, go the opposite way and just have a wide open lane to the hoop. I think that help defense is a little bit slow on the lower difficulty levels. So I can see where he's coming from if he's playing on those lower difficulty levels.
And Bucky T says, still robotic movement at times, bad rim mechanics, change of direction is bad still, a lot of sliding, shooting mechanics are about the same and not fair to the user, just like last year. Things I do like are the visuals, cutscenes, the crowd, CPU improvement, and the powerful dunks. And I absolutely do like this 2K24 more than 2K23. It feels more challenging against the CPU in Hall of Fame. And yeah, I do feel it is a step up over 2K23.
Yeah, and the 60 FPS cutscenes are amazing, right?
Yeah,
I talked about that. It's one of the first thing I noticed. Should have happened before. I'm not sure why it wasn't there before.
It's in 2K17. It's in 2K17.
Yeah, exactly. It's in 2K17, right? But yeah, I mean, it adds a really nice visual element. Like after you make a basket, and then your player, let's say you're using Carmelo Anthony and he does his 3 fingers to the head celebration or whatever, seeing that in 60 FPS as he goes down the court and everything, that looks amazing. So definitely agree there. He touched on a lot of points that I've made about, my critiques on this motion system, right? And, related to like change of direction, the just the strange player movement and the suction and all of that stuff. I do think shooting is a little bit better this year. But again, I need to spend a little bit more time with the game.
And heading over to Facebook now, our Facebook page, at the NLSC on Facebook. Ryan Q says, it's the same Kobe since 2K20. Keith G says, first impressions, that what was shown in the trailer about Pro Play was all BS. And yeah, I mean, as I said, I'm still not seeing all of the benefits of Pro Play yet, but I am willing to give it a chance and see the subtleties that I may not have seen in my first few hours playing the game.
Yeah, the 0102 Kobe, the Froby, I think he looks good. Like overall, I think the default cyberface looks good. The 0304 Kobe, I've seen the community do 100 times better. I don't think that's a very good Kobe. His eyes are too high up on his head. There's the texture isn't very good. And then also the bald Kobe. So, the older Kobe, like that is also not a very good face either. So it's a little bit disappointing that we can't get a better Kobe face for a game that's centered around Kobe, right? With the whole Mamba Moments mode and all of that stuff. On the PC version, there's going to be amazing Kobe cyber faces made, so we can use those, and those will be quite a bit better than new gen. As far as Pro Play, like I said, I've seen it on signature shots and on free throws. I believe it's probably been used on some of these moves that I'm seeing around the rim, etc. I do like the idea, and I'm seeing some of the results. I'm seeing it looks pretty good at times, but I think that it's a lot of marketing, and we'll see how much it was actually used.
And Michael V says, I like the new player market system and salary cap. Salary cap is the new mode in MyTEAM this year, replacing a couple of similar modes like limited in previous years. So yeah, a different take on the player market system there. I like it in theory, as I said last week, but obviously in practice, it's like you said, too good to be true. But obviously people do like it.
Yeah, he's the first person I've seen say something positive about it, but I'm going to jump into it myself. And on the next NLSC podcast, I'll give my impressions of how my team works and how the market works. I haven't been able to get into it yet.
And heading over to the NLSC Discord now, Vin says, MyNBA Eras is disappointing, leaving a lot to be desired, especially when you see the detailed work that went into the Jordan Challenge and Mamba Moments. I finally feel like the modes with microtransactions attached are ruining what made sports games great in the first place. And totally agree with that.
I can't disagree with anything he said. Yeah, I don't even know how to expand on that, because he's just right on, and we've talked about these things so many times before. And that's why we, rail against the whole microtransaction BS and all the stuff they're pulling with my team and the online scene and, the whole money grab. We do think that it's ruining games in general. It's not even just NBA 2K, right?
Sure.
It's having a super negative effect on consumers and on gaming in general.
But thank you to everybody for your responses. We will continue to ask you how you're feeling about the game and read out your opinions on the show and, of course, give our impressions as well. But, Derek, as we wrap up here, I don't like numerical scores in general, especially because they don't really leave much room for, if this year's game is a 9.5, but next year's game is, just as good or better, can you give it a 10? How do you... To what tenth of a point do you go to, kind of thing? So I prefer, do you recommend the game or not? With the amount of time I've spent with the game so far, I don't feel I've put enough hours into the game to completely recommend it or even say completely stay away from it. But what's your gut telling you about what you'd say to gamers who ask you, Derek, should I get this game?
My recommendation is to pick up the PC version on sale. I think that it's worth waiting a month or two for that sale to happen. Right around Christmas time, the game usually goes around, 50% off, sometimes more, and then even more off in the new year. I do think that there were some quality of life improvements, which I mentioned earlier in the show, to the PC version. I feel like it's very moddable, just like NBA 2K23, 2K22, etc., where I think that it would be worth picking that version up. Now, because the gameplay is the same on Xbox One and PS4 as PC, I'm going to recommend the same thing. Maybe pick it up while it's on sale. From what I can tell, the online scene is mostly dead, at least at this point, on those versions. So if you are picking it up, you should be picking it up for My League, for the mods if you're on PC, for the gameplay improvements, for using the default classic teams, the all-time teams, and the current teams, maybe dabbling a little bit in Blacktop, maybe doing some My League customization, like creating teams, all of that stuff, like jerseys and blah, blah, blah. So, that is my opinion. Now, do I think that if you spend full price right now on the PC version, that you'll regret it? Not necessarily. It depends on, how much you value getting current rosters and those quality of life improvements that I mentioned, and how much you want to hit the ground running with mods. Because $60 for a game that you're going to spend hundreds or thousands of hours on, it is worth it. in my opinion. But waiting for a sale, that might be your best bet. As far as new gen, I want people to not spend money unnecessarily or not be baited into spending or pressured into spending more than they have to. I would say, with everything that I'm hearing about the online scene, with everything that I'm hearing about the MyTEAM market, all of that stuff, if the online scene and the money and the MyTEAM mode, if those are like your primary targets and your primary enjoyment, and you don't want to spend extra money, I would possibly either not pick it up this year, or I would go into it, pick it up when it goes on sale. That's my opinion. And as far as if for new gen, if you want to pick up the game for MyNBA Eras, if you want to pick it up for Play Now, Play Now online, if you want to pick it up for, just jumping into MyNBA and, building a team from the ground up, or, using your favorite team, et cetera, and you want to enjoy that customization. Maybe you want to download some community rosters and all of that stuff, and you want to pick up the game for like $70, then I think that, and you're staying away from those online modes and that money grab, I think that, yeah, you know what, it might be a good purchase for you.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I mean, I would say if you enjoyed NBA 2K23, it is worth considering picking up NBA 2K24. You may want to wait a little bit longer for people who have already made that commitment to share their opinions. And as we've said before, and I'll reiterate now, we will always be honest with our opinions on this show and in our other commentary, in my articles, and on X and everywhere else we're talking about the game. If you did enjoy 2K23, I think it's quite possible that you will enjoy 2K24, at least on the virtual hardwood. As you said, Derek, though, the modes and the changes they've made to MyTEAM, and you can see where they're going to the season passes, obviously, and you don't have to get them, but they're obviously going to try and pressure you there. You go into the menus, and they're definitely trying to get you to get those season passes for MyTEAM and MyCAREER for the seasonal content. And the new player market, obviously some people do like it. Michael V on Facebook said that he enjoys that. It certainly does have problems, and some of these other issues with the online scene, and I haven't played online yet, apart from our game, obviously, but I haven't played the MyCAREER and its connected modes, so I haven't experienced that yet, so I can't vouch for them as yet. I will circle back to that probably as soon as next week, but I would also advise waiting for the moment, looking at gameplay footage and listening to people that you trust, hopefully us, and waiting until it goes on sale. But if you did enjoy 2K23, then you're probably more inclined to enjoy 2K24.
Yeah, and I know that for the younger crowd, it's tough to wait for a sale, right?
Yeah.
Because it's the newest game, they want to play with their friends. Sometimes they want to create content, so they want to be able to get on YouTube or talk about it on X or, on Facebook, etc. Like, I get it. I get that the pressure is there, but just know that these games do go on sale quite often, and when they do, it's not just like 10% off, right? Like, oftentimes it's 25, 50. I've seen it go as much as 75 or 80% off at different times during the game cycle. So patience sometimes pays off. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Oh, absolutely. And the flip side of what I said, if you weren't that impressed by 2K23, if you put it aside after a couple of weeks or a month or so, then I would definitely recommend holding off, because there is a lot of 2K23 in 2K24, some quality of life improvements, some improvements on the court as well. But, like I said, my expectations were kind of low, Derek, so it's cleared a low bar for me. That being said, it is very solid across the board, but solid might not be enough to really move the needle for you.
Here's my opinion. 2K21 through NBA 2K24, very, very, very similar gameplay-wise. Like, player movement, it's the same motion system. The dribbling overall is similar. The suction overall is similar. Like, there's just the graphics overall are just similar. Like, overall, the games is very similar from 2K21 to 2K24. So, like Andrew said, if you don't have a problem or got mostly enjoyment out of the gameplay from 2K21 to 2K23, then you more than likely will like NBA 2K24. That's the way I look at it.
So those are our first impressions of 2K24. We will continue to talk about the game, obviously, in the weeks to come, and share more impressions, and take a deeper dive into modes like MyTEAM and MyCAREER and MyNBA Eras, and talk more about the rosters and so forth. Unfortunately, some of the Mamba Moments teams, Derek, have not made it into the regular selection of teams, kind of like the Jordan Challenge last year, those extra teams. So that is a shame. But we will go into more detail about those modes in the weeks to come. But yeah, that's how we're feeling about the game after our first weekend with it, basically.
Yeah, and Andrew and I will try to connect again and play either the new gen version or the last gen version, and we'll try to share those experiences with you folks. But yeah, screw Zach LaVine, Andrew. That game winner, that was ridiculous. And
on that note, that has brought us to the end of this week's show. As always, we thank you for tuning in and invite you to join us again next week, either on the NLSC, MyNBA-Live.com, our YouTube channel, or your podcast app of choice. In the meantime, please connect with us on social media. That's where you can get in touch with us, and of course, stay up to date with all of our content. So, Derek, go ahead and plug the handles.
Yeah, you can find me on X at D43G and at D4384. I am also on YouTube, D43, and on the NLSC, D43.
I am Andrew in the forum, and Andrew NLSC on X. The NLSC is on X and Facebook at the NLSC. We're also NLSC Basketball on Instagram and Threads. I'm trying to post a little bit more on Threads. Unfortunately, it doesn't have a desktop interface at the moment, which is why I've been a bit slack about that, but please follow us there. We're on YouTube at youtube.com/NBA Live Series Center, and of course, keep it locked to the NLSC itself, NBA-Live.com, for everything we do for basketball video games. So, thank you once again for tuning in, and until next time, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Derek.
Go get buckets, everyone.